Welcome, you wonderful viewers. This is your host, Ankit Shah from Ahmedabad. Today, we will talk on the secrets of the Chinese army, a topic generally untouched by Indian media despite months of standoff with China. And today, we have a guest who is popular in geopolitics and defense analysis, someone who brought the fan culture in this domain, Abhijit Iyer Mitra, with us. His views and candid talk with humor and truth element is a lethal combination which makes it for a comprehensive analysis. Abhijit, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ankit.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me on.
so it's a pleasure to have you. So we start with the Doklam episode first. So it was the first India-China engagement at the Tri-Junction. And the way I looked at it as Jinping's, personal attempt to flaunt Doklam capture at the 19th Chinese Communist Party Congress, where he might have wished to showcase it as a major pointer, not to declare his successor. He anyways broke the norms of the party and did not declare his successor. They wrapped it up before the BRICS meeting in about 70 days. So, Abhijit, what, according to you, were the objectives of Doklam and were they achieved?
So, Doklam is a very curious case because it points to a lot of things that Xi Jinping has wanted to do and at the same time partially succeeded in, but also mostly failed in. So, the first thing is Xi Jinping, for unknown reasons, has decided that Deng Xiaoping's policy of, carry a big stick but walk very softly is no longer going to be relevant to China. He wants to flex muscles. Now, the way Deng Xiaoping had envisioned this was that China should not start flexing its muscles till it became the paramount power. Not the competitor, the paramount power. Xi Jinping does not think so. He has started flexing muscles even when China is merely a middle-income economy that hasn't yet touched, well, just basically touched about 10,000 US dollars per capita. Number one, this is now confirmed because of an accretion of events. It's Doklam, what's happened in the South China Sea, what's happened in Galwan, and so on and so forth. This is now confirmed that this is the path of maximum conflict that China has chosen. Number one. Number two, there is the internal calculus in all of this, and this is where it is remarkably counterproductive. Now, a lot of the analysis thought that he was doing this in order to consolidate his position within the party. It turns out he didn't need any of this to consolidate his position within the party, because he today is the strongest leader the Chinese Communist Party has had since Mao Zedong, possibly more powerful than Deng Xiaoping himself. So, and Doklam specifically, when Doklam happened, I was in fact in Tibet, trying to surveil a lot of the infrastructure. It was a holiday that was pre-planned. So, it wasn't specifically to go and look at what was happening on the Chinese side. It was just sheer good luck that I was there during Doklam, literally about 100 kilometers away from where the entire thing was happening. And what was amusing was that back in Beijing, they were telling me that they didn't know what to do because the Indian reaction was so unexpected. They just expected it to go the way it always had, which was they'll slowly encroach, and then it's too late. There's nothing you can do about it. Salami slicing tactics. And that hadn't worked. India's pushback had been stronger than normal. So they were genuinely flummoxed about what to do. And what happens is, a few months later, there's the Wuhan summit, where India basically gives up everything that it got. So, what was gained by the Indian soldier on the heights of Doklam was given away by the Indian politician at the Wuhan summit. The Chinese don't understand that either. The third thing about the Chinese is they're very confused about Indian policy. They think we deliberately lie to them because for them, they have never seen a more pro-China pusillanimous arm of the Indian government than the MEA. They're like, very frequently in Beijing, they'll tell me, look, your foreign ministry defends us better than our foreign ministry defends us. Of course, nobody takes the Chinese foreign ministry seriously. The foreign minister, the foreign ministry are something of a joke in China, uh, because all the power there lies with the People's Liberation Army. On the other hand, they look at the Indian military and Indian defense, and they're like, dude, you're so hyper aggressive, you're actually scary, you perpetually want war with us, you perpetually want confrontation with us. So they think we are being duplicitous, that we're playing some kind of a Akshay Kumar Twinkle Khanna strategy when it comes to BJP, that husband will keep praising the government, wife will keep criticizing the government. So it's kind of like that with their whole setup out there. So it gets
So
very,
if
very.
Abhijit, if you compare this with the LAC standoff, right, one of the lookout is that it could be one to deter India's action on Pakistan. They might have in their calculations, as the standoff started parallel with Zalmay Khalilzad's visit to Delhi, stressing on India's role in Afghan peace efforts, and maybe also to confirm the behavior of the Indian army after Doklam, that the forces are going to stand strong again. So the same General Jonki was involved with the standoff, LAC standoff. So how far
Right.
you feel that the
So here's
objectives
the
differ
issue.
here?
They never keep Pakistan in the calculus. As far as
Okay,
they're concerned, Pakistan is meant to take all the diversionary action to protect China. China is not meant to lift a finger to protect Pakistan. Because the
true.
entire Chinese attitude towards alliances is that China does not do alliances. We give you nuclear weapons, we give you the ability to be a rogue actor in your neighborhood to bog down regional powers, but we
True.
do not come to your assistance. Don't even ask us for assistance. We'll at best give you some UN assistance. We will not give you military assistance. Which is why there is a strong belief, which I agree with, in the Indian strategic community, that if India and China go to war, Pakistan will enter that war. But if India and Pakistan go to war, China will not enter that war.
Will not enter. Correct.
Will not enter.
Correct. Yeah.
So there's been
So
a whole
how hopeful are
accumulation
you
of
that
events.
no, how hopeful you are that this standoff might end with July 21 CCP anniversary? I mean, they would like to, I mean, before also they finished it off before the BRICS meeting. So they would like to end this with a positive note before the anniversary.
They won't. This looking at things that they're trying to end this off before breaks, or they're trying to end this before the party conference, I believe is right now is not a valid way of gauging Chinese actions.
Mhm.
Simply because Xi Jinping has divorced his accountability to the party from what he does on the international stage. He has accumulated so much power that he no longer needs to have successes on the field or whatever to keep consolidating his position at home. It's very much like Mao Zedong. You can have a failed cultural revolution and still be paramount leader. You can have a failed great leap forward where millions of people die and still be the paramount leader, and so on and so forth. So he has divorced performance from accountability.
So a lot of things we hear about, the Chinese army being the kung fu army, what they call it. So it is about, one of the information is that it's about 70% single child, and single child, even physiologically, in terms of height, weight, and endurance, the Chinese army is said not to have be at par with the other big one armies, and unfit for the army job psychologically. As a single child, their parents might implode the country from within in case of war with futile reasons. And also the PLA is aligned to CCP. The promotions and transfers are assumed to be political in nature, and there could be some faction in the army which could be linked with anti-Jinping leaders sitting in Beijing. Could that mean that some faction in the army might want to lose a war in case a full-fledged war happens? What is your take?
Yes and no. I would urge a great deal of caution in taking most of these reports seriously, and I'll tell you why. If you remember, the Soviet army was also a political army, And yet, when the Germans invaded, there were lots of people, generals and officers in the Soviet army whose parents, whose families, whose entire families had been wiped out by Stalin. And yet they fought without rancor because they were protecting their motherland against a horrible enemy. So never confuse personal gripe against the leader with the national cause out there, which is very, very strong in China. Where you can criticize this is twofold. One is because of the one child policy that you mentioned. Yes, they have kind of turned slightly weakling, that they're very interested in protecting the one child that they have. So they've led sheltered lives with, PlayStations and things like that. It's quite one thing for Ram Singh, who's been the son of a farmer who's known a tough life, to go fight for his country. It's quite another for, say, Ram Sabarwal, who has grown up in number 1 or number 2 Aurangzeb Road or APJ Abdul Kalam Road in Delhi, to who's only known Ferraris and Lamborghinis his entire life, to go fight. Now, a lot of Chinese soldiers do come from a privileged background. The issue is they are never given the frontline fighting roles. Because of mommy and daddy, they're given all these cushy jobs. Their families invariably see to it that they don't have to do any of the high risk jobs. The high risk jobs are still given to the boys who come from the rural areas, the fighting areas and things like that. So even that may be a slight wishful thinking. However, the one aspect that is important, that does affect their fighting abilities, has been the reorganization of the Chinese army that Xi Jinping has launched. Because the army will be the only threat to him, he has kept the military in a perpetual state of flux. He has been shifting commanders and troops and military regions left, right, and center. Today you can be in artillery, tomorrow you will be in the attack corps, day after tomorrow you'll be in the infantry corps and things like that. So, people aren't allowed to build up their expertise in any one this thing. And that's particularly important because when you don't have military people who are specializing in a region or in a kind of warfare or in a branch or a silo of warfare, what happens is you've got a generalist army that isn't tuned to fighting. It's more like a parade army usually, number one. Number two, what has been happening is, and this is actually worrying for India, is that Xi Jinping has been focusing on air centrism. Now, all modern militaries see air power as the primary tool of war fighting. India only started transitioning to that with Balakot in 2019. China started that transition about 10, 12 years back. So they're way, way ahead of us in that score. So the issue is we're looking at the wrong edge of the stick. We're looking at the army when we should be looking at the Chinese Air Force. And see, the thing about an Air Force is Air Force don't carry out coups. Armies carry out coups. It is ground forces that carry out coups. Air forces and navies do not carry out coups. They mutiny, like you had the Bombay mutiny against the British in the last days of the British Raj, but they don't carry out coups. And this is why he has moved towards air centrism. And a Chinese air power is a bit scary. Yes.
Okay. So, do you think there is any way the PLA can get back, to allegiance towards the country instead of the party? Do you see any such possibility? Or the party is going to have a, predominant role for a considerable period of time?
For them, party and country are interchangeable. They don't see this as being particularly different. So, for example, in the Korean War, Mao Zedong sent tens of thousands of kids to die. They lost hundreds of thousands, millions maybe, and they died. In Vietnam, Deng Xiaoping had no qualms about sending people to die. They died for their country. We still don't know how many people died in the coronavirus. And they managed to suppress it quite well. You didn't see a rebellion break out for that.
So the real numbers would never come out.
Exactly. So it's not going to be an issue there.
All right. So you must have seen as Jay Shankar telling yesterday that the relations are at crossroads. In all seriousness, what could be the levels of military escalation scenarios you could see?
The government of India has traditionally been very good at making speeches, not very good at carrying through with those speeches. Now, I was very impressed with Jaishankar's speech, unusually, because I've never been impressed with his speeches. I'm waiting to see how it translates on the ground. Remember, this is a foreign minister that didn't even mention China after Galwan happened.
True.
Right. So I'm waiting to see. I applaud the speech. I fear that not one thing is going to translate into action in the ground. They are not going to take any kind of coercive measures, hostile measures against China. They still can't make up their minds. It's Nehru repeat. After the
But don't
1962
you
war,
think,
you still
Abhijit?
didn't want an
Don't
alliance.
you
One
think,
second, let me
Abhijit?
finish.
Uh,
Let me finish. After the
yeah.
1962 war, they still didn't want an alliance with America. After
Mhm.
Galwan, you're still confused about who the enemy is. So best of
Correct.
luck.
Correct. So diplomacy is anyways not going to work with these guys. Do you see anyways besides the military power? I really doubt if diplomacy alone is going to work with China.
Diplomacy will not work with China.
Yeah.
And many people have tried this, and it gets into this wife bashing complex, that the wife keeps asking, what did I do to get bashed? Maybe if I had done something different, my beloved husband wouldn't have bashed me. The fact is, you're married to the wrong man, boss. It's just that. So China's like that. People always try to see reason into why China invaded them, thrashed them, killed them, whatever. There's usually never a reason for it. This is unfortunately, with most countries, you can fairly accurately gauge where policy is going, why it's going. With China, you seldom can. You never can, in
Correct.
fact. So
Correct.
it's a waste of time even trying with China.
True, true. So the way the time has stretched with the standoff, do you see both the countries taking the wars inside small nations? I mean, India might visibly strike, China-propped groups inside Myanmar this year anytime. Could they also attack Indian allies like Bhutan land grab by PLA, something like that? And will what you think would be the Indian response in that case? Are we equally jubilant to secure Bhutan on ground? What do you think?
I personally don't care much for Bhutan. China can go ahead occupy Bhutan for all I care. I think they deserve what they get. Remember, Bhutan is a country that ethnically cleansed its entire Hindu population. All right.
True.
People they claim are Nepalese who settled there in the 1800s. They just decided one fine day to go ethnically cleanse them. So if Bhutan goes under Chinese rule, I really don't see what the problem is.
In
I
case
also
PLA
tactically don't see
tries,
an issue.
in case PLA tries a land grab in Bhutan, you see Indian reaction coming in terms
I
of
suspect there will be
defending them.
some kind of an Indian reaction, but I also suspect that it won't be a very big reaction, and I'll tell you why. If you remember what happened just a few months back, where there was a Chinese village and a whole Chinese encampment discovered 9 kilometers inside Bhutan.
Hmm.
The Bhutanese ambassador in Delhi and the newspaper called The Bhutanese went out of their way to deny the Chinese were in their territory. And then finally, when we produced the satellite imagery, they're like, oh, yeah, okay, we're very sorry. They are in our territory. Now, when you have an ambassador and a official mouthpiece newspaper that are so hell-bent on self-delusion and denial, how do you save a country from its own self-delusion and denial? Okay, so Bhutan is one of those cases where they're in a dangerous loop of anti-Indianism at the moment, and I say let them be. Let them come under Chinese rule. I wish the Chinese on the Bhutanese, and I wish the Bhutanese on China. I think Bhutanese culture needs to be wiped out. I think Bhutanese Buddhism needs to be wiped out. I think their monastery should face the same thing that Jokhang monastery faced. I think their king needs to face the same thing the Dalai Lama faced. Good riddance to bad rubbish. I wish the People's Liberation Army all success in capturing Thimphu.
Okay. What are the loopholes do you see in the Chinese Navy and Air Force vis-a-vis India and US? Like what would be the loopholes you are aware of in terms of machinery and
So
the technology?
look, the great advantage that India has had over China for at least the last 20, 30 years is the fact that we have access to far, far, far superior technology than the Chinese do. Okay, Chinese submarines are still extremely noisy.
All right.
China's submarine technology is based on the earlier Kilo class submarines, which are 80s submarines essentially, which were very quiet for their generation, but there's a whole new generation of Western sonars that have developed to detect the Kilo class. And they've transferred the Kilo class technology onto their nuclear platforms and things like that, but they are still pretty damn noisy. When you talk to the French, when you talk to the Americans off the record, they'll tell you that we have no problems detecting Chinese submarines. They're fairly loud. Right. So this is one of the great advantages we have. The issue is we never exploit our advantages to the maximum.
Okay.
We don't single source certain things because under this really bizarre belief of strategic autonomy, of which we have none, we try to buy things from multiple sources which don't work together. It's like having an office setup where 10 computers work on Apple Pages, 10 computers work on Microsoft Word, and 10 computers work on some Unix open platform word substitute. Okay, because when you try to combine all these computers, what all these fellows have done, you will have problems on any one computer combining Unix, Windows, and iOS software into one document.
So
It
does
adds
the
to time.
Tejas order satisfy you in terms of,
Let's come to the
if we have,
pages later. 1 minute.
all right.
So this is the issue with the Navy. With the Air Force, again, we see the exact same thing. China is fantastic at coming up with these stealthy exterior shapes,
Okay.
except that those stealthy exterior shapes are complete junk inside. China to date has yet to produce a functional engine. When Pakistan flies the JF-17, they are very clear they do not want a Chinese engine. A Western engine lasts something like 2,000 hours, 2,000 to 8,000 hours. A Russian engine, by comparison, lasts about 400 hours. And look at the difference, 800, 8,000 compared to 400. There's no comparison out here. Even if you push that engine at full supersonic speed, 24/7 a day, it'll still last you about 2,000 hours, which is still no comparison to 400 hours. A Chinese engine, you are lucky if it lasts you 100 hours. On average, it lasts between 50 to 80 hours. That is how bad Chinese engines are. And that is why Pakistan has the RD-33 engines for their JF-17s, not the Chinese engines. So there's so much out here you can dissect. Now let's come to the Tejas.
Yes.
See, doing a cut paste of a good engine, a good radar doesn't make for a great aircraft. The question is, how do you integrate it? How do you do everything with it and all of that? It's a decent aircraft had this come out in the 1980s when it was meant to come out. Even in the 1990s, I would have said it's a pretty decent aircraft. If in 2020, when China is rolling out 5th generation fighters, if you're rolling out the 1st generation of your 4th generation fighter, there is something seriously wrong with you out here. The JF-17 has better product maturity. It has a much bigger range of weapons that it can use. Okay. It has a much greater indigenous supply chain. Indigenous in the sense, if you consider Pakistan to be a continuum, the Pakistani military industrial complex to be a continuum of the Chinese one. With the Tejas, you don't. I'm still wondering, when a plane is 40% imported, what is the strategic autonomy? Now, I can argue that it makes good logistical sense to have a foreign engine, a foreign radar, because you can keep replacing them rapidly and so on and so forth. But then you need to improve the platform on which it is based. There are significant problems even with the platform. It was designed at a time when the smaller the size, the more agile the plane was. Today, even single engine fighters, you want them slightly larger because you need to fit more quadruplex redundancy equipment onto it and things like that, which it does not have the space for. You look at it purely from an industrial point of view. India's argument is it is going to make a smaller plane than Japan or Sweden and fit the same amount of electronics into it. Now, you're talking about Japan and Sweden that are electronic superpowers and superpowers at miniaturizing electronics, and India that has no experience in miniaturizing electronics. It's essentially like India today coming out and saying, we are going to produce something to beat the Mercedes-Benz.
So, but over a time, I mean, we should get some learning curve out of this. I mean, if you're making something, I mean, somewhere we have to start our own.
Agreed. Issue is, I would believe in learning curves if there had been accountability.
Correct.
Right now, there has been no accountability over the Tejas program ever. Learning comes with accountability. Learning comes with introspection. Learning comes with being very, very brutal about your own failings. When you are incapable of expressing your failings, when you are incapable of diagnosing what led to the failings, when you feel that admitting failure equals a loss of face, that becomes very problematic.
True. So, say if you're proposing a sizable shift to a Western defense equipments from, say, Russia, I mean, there are many such proponents who argue this. So, my question is, how far you compare the trustworthiness quotient of West and tech transfer liberties offered by the West vis-a-vis Russia?
With Russia, we have a completely different relationship. Russia trusts us with a lot of equipment. We can literally walk up to the Russians and ask them for anything, and they will see to it we get it in some form or the other, including a nuclear submarine, rocket technology. So when they didn't want to give us missile technology, they gave us other technologies instead, which then helped us over a period of 10, 12 years perfect our rocket technology and things like that, right? The Russians have been very generous in that sense. They've been very helpful in that sense. The issue is Russia itself is falling so far backwards in the manufacturing process. It's not even funny, right?
Okay.
You go look at Russian equipment. It's quite crude. It's basic economics, right? A country of 130 million people at $10,000 per capita, the same per capita income as China effectively. How does it compete with a dynamic market of over 1.1 billion people at an average of $43,000 per capita? Because remember, when we talk of the Westosphere, you're talking about America, Canada, the whole of NATO, Western Europe, the whole of NATO, so including parts of NATO, Eastern Europe as well, Japan, Israel, Australia, South Korea, which are all fused into a single market, which buy from each other, which are happy to use components from each other, sub-components from each other. You're looking at a market of 1.1 billion people. So basically 10 times the market size of Russia, with 4 times the income of Russia. So vastly greater economies of scale, vastly greater educational abilities, vastly greater R&D abilities. Ultimately these things matter. Resources talk. Of course, you can have one brilliant guy like Dhirubhai Ambani who comes from studying under a streetlight to become a corporate magnate and set up the Ambani group. But in 99% of the cases, that is the 0.00001% of cases. In the remaining 99.9999999% of cases, it is the son of a Mahindra, the son of a Tata, the son of a Ambani, who will be the industrialist, not the son of Chunulal Chotimal from the streets of Ahmedabad.
Correct. But that has been true for the ancient India models of business where the family lead the stuff. Uh, Coming back, what is the trustworthiness quotient of the West? I mean, if we shift our buying over there and the tech transfer liberties, as you said that Russia would give more liberties to pick what we want, but what about the West? I mean, are they willing to do equal amount of tech transfer, and how trustworthy are they?
When we come to the West, remember, we always assume it's only America. It isn't. You have a lot of things which you can get from America where they have legitimate concerns. So one of the reasons is, I know the American publicity machinery out here, Boeing and Lockheed Martin, will keep saying, yes, we're willing to transfer engine technology to you. We're willing to give you F-35. But when you actually go sit down at the Pentagon, they are crystal clear. They will not mince words. See, their PR is very different. And in private, they are extremely honest people. They will say, boss, if you think you are getting engine technology from us, I don't know what drugs you are shooting up. Correct. Your operational security is such a joke. And the political cooperation between our countries is not at the point where we A, feel comfortable sharing that technology with you, and B, because your operational security is such a joke, if we give the technology to you, we might as well be handing it over to the Chinese because all your operational security is compromised. They tell you that to your face. And it isn't even said in a diplomatic way. It is given to you extraordinarily bluntly within the first 2 minutes of the conversation. In public, they will never embarrass you. So Joe Biden or Donald So Joe Biden and Donald Trump won't come here and say that on a public conference because they don't want to embarrass you. They understand diplomatic tact versus honesty in private. So I've always found them extremely honest. They'll tell you what you need to do politically and in operational security terms to start getting that technology. Okay, this is number one. Number two, remember there are alternate sources of technology in the West that are where you can get technology without changing your political alignments that much. Israel is number one for subcomponents. For full-blown components, you have Sweden and France. France, for a very long time, has been offering us a veto on demand. You come into and because France is a middle power, they're like, look, we're not going to treat you like an inferior the way Russia or America treats you. You're our equal. We'll treat you as an equal. You buy into the French military-industrial complex. You buy a 50% share in Arriva for nuclear reactors, we'll give you nuclear submarines. We'll give you the technology for our nuclear submarines, but you become full-scale partners in it. You become full-scale partners in Dassault. You partner with the next generation of Dassault fighters to come. We'll give you that technology. Same with Sweden, right? With Sweden, they'll tell you, yes, Pratt & Whitney won't give you because it's an American engine. We are not going to, General Electric won't give you the engine technology because it's an American company. We are not going to go find and put an engine into the Gripen and destroy our industrial relationship with GE because, industrial relationships work like friendships. They'll be like, Ankit, तूने मेरे girlfriend को चुम्मा दी, तू धोखेबाज है, मैं तेरे साथ बात नहीं करूंगा. It's exactly like that. Tomorrow, if Gripen moves away from GE and puts a Rolls-Royce engine in there, GE will be like, तूने मेरे को धोखा दिया, तूने उस लड़की, उस Rolls-Royce को चुम्मा दिया, निकल मेरे घर से, kind of thing, right? True. So, industrial relationships matter. So, if India goes and tells Saab, get the GE engine out of your Gripen and put in a Rolls-Royce engine and give us and negotiate with Rolls-Royce that they give us a commitment for transferring that engine technology to us. Now, Rolls-Royce is one of the companies that's willing to transfer that technology.
Correct.
Just like France is willing to get SNECMA to transfer the French crystal blade technology to India. The issue is the French will not allow you to put the French engine onto the Gripen. Right? Because it's a Swedish plane. They want you to buy a French plane.
Correct.
So as long as you maneuver these things fine, you can get away with not buying too much American technology if you don't want that kind of political union with them. But remember that political union comes with a lot of benefits and advantages. You're basically outsourcing the need for you to collect, duplicate ruinously expensive intelligence complexes. Right. Even countries like Britain and France have not found the need to duplicate all of this. Japan has not found the need to duplicate all of this. They're very comfortable living off American intelligence, and they get the kind of intelligence that we in India can't even dream of. So are there trade-offs? Of course there is. Part of life is you can't do Frankie Sinatra saying, I did it my way.
True.
Growing up is adjusting with your ecosystem and your environment. जब हम बच्चे हैं हम सब नंगा घूमते हैं, पर जब हम बड़े हो जाते हैं you can't say देखो मेरे को साउथ ब्लॉक में मेरे को IAS नहीं बनाया क्योंकि they don't accept my Jain lifestyle of roaming around naked 24/7.
Correct.
How many people do you know are allowed to practice a nudist lifestyle in the IAS? Do you think you will ever have a nudist president of India or a nudist prime minister of India? No.
Zero.
So I find this thing, you must accept 100% of all the components of my strategic autonomy and give me what we want, the equivalent of a fellow who grew up in a nudist lifestyle saying that you have to make me prime minister of India without judging me for being a nudist.
So customer is not going to be the absolute king over here in these deals, right? All right.
No.
So coming back to China, I mean, how do you see? I mean,
Also,
yeah.
To remember, you are also not the king when it comes to your relationship with Russia. Huh?
True.
There are also political trade-offs there. Never forget that. People tend to
True.
forget so easily that Russia also requires certain political trade-offs.
Correct. So coming back to this China thing, I mean, people see Indian Ocean as the real battlefield. Do you think Chinese Navy aiming at, Andaman, that kind of strikes or something, I mean, in a decade or so or something like that? Indian Ocean.
The Indian Ocean should be the real battlefield. It isn't. And, this shows you the sort of myopia we're getting into. The battlefield should not be the Malacca Straits. The battlefield should be the South China Sea. Now, if you remember what America did when America and the USSR were at loggerheads, they shared a direct border in Alaska, right? Alaska facing the Russian Far East over the Bering Straits. Yet, you never saw military buildups out there. There were very few, very far between. There was never any proper showdown in the Bering Sea or the Bering Straits. All the showdowns used to happen in Europe and Germany. Yet with India, what happens is all the showdowns either happen on Indian territory, on Indian waters near the Malacca Straits or in the Himalayas. You need to turn the South China Sea into your Fulda Gap. You need to turn the South China Sea into your Germany. And you need to turn the Himalayas and the Malacca Straits into your Bering Sea. That's not happening out here. We are basically trying to create this thing where they keep challenging us on the Malacca Straits. We create this thing where they're trying to challenge us in the Himalayas. You can't allow that. The safety and security of the Malaccas and the Himalayas lies in the South China Sea. The more aggressive you get in the South China Sea, the more and more you will find that they will have to take a back seat in the Himalayas and the Malaccas. We don't do that. We are not carrying the fight to them. They are carrying the fight to us.
The Quad has to push it into South China Sea so that the focus does not come to the Indian Ocean.
No, the Quad doesn't have to push it. The Quad is very clear about this. India has to push it. India is not pushing it.
Okay, so India all alone has to go for it.
No. India in consort with a lot of people, because remember, it's not just the Quad. The Singaporeans want us there. The Taiwanese want us there. The Vietnamese want us there. We're not listening to any of them.
We are not engaging in South China Sea.
Correct.
Correct. So that should have been the focus, right? So thank you, Abhijit, for your insights. We will love to have you again on the show. It's a pleasure to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on the show, Ankit. Pleasure talking to you.
Yeah. So we will discuss China's concept of unrestricted warfare and Chinese Communist Party's internal politics in the coming shows. The idea of fifth generation hybrid warfare, which has a lot to do with the kind of fake farmers protests that we saw, and how are these supported by the left parties linked to China. So stay tuned to see the kind of challenges India faces on its path to a reformist $5 trillion economy. As we see that, my belief is that a nation does not break at the border. It breaks when the civilization and the cultural identity is struck from within. So stay tuned with us. Subscribe the Bharat Kshetra YouTube channel. Jai Hind.